Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Roland here with me today. How you doing, Roland?
Unbelievable. How you doing, Cedric?
I'm doing excellent. I see you got some sunshine out there. Where are you located these days?
I'm in the southeast part of Washington State, just a little over 3,000 miles from you.
Wow, Washington State. What's it like? What's it like out there? The scenery must be amazing.
Well, besides, we still have cowboys and Indians, and it's where I'm at is on the east side of the state. On the west side is where it's really beautiful trees. I'm on the side where there's a lot of farming, a lot of fruit trees, a lot of farming. It's kind of a desert type. We get 438 days of sunshine a year, so it's
really that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
I actually grew up on the other side of the state, 4 hours from here, 230 miles, but that's on the west coast, south about 2 hours from Seattle.
Okay. Well, I want to say hello to everybody who's tuning in right now, wherever you may be, whether we can see you or we cannot see you. I want to say thank you for joining our community, tuning into our episodes, and listening to our guests. The life journey, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we cannot skip over. When I was a young kid, and I'll tell you a brief story, I used to watch a TV show where people used to present their stories, and it inspired me. And so today, I firmly believe in the stories of our guests. Some young person or adult today or tomorrow is going to benefit from understanding what you did as you grew up and what you did next. And all of those sorts of questions are extremely important. And today is no different. Roland, talk to us about where you grew up and how it was for you.
Well, I was born on a dairy farm, and it was back, the early 50s. And my mom was from a very poor family. She was 16, a junior in high school. My dad was a senior in high school, and she got pregnant, and they kind of messed up my dad's plans of going to college and stuff. But then they moved up to Seattle, and he got a job, and I guess they loved the creation process so much. I had two more brothers come along, and 5 years into the marriage, they divorced, and I moved to a welfare project in Seattle with my mom and my two brothers. And I always joke and say it was a pretty rough neighborhood. I was actually the biggest wimp in the neighborhood. I think there's one kid.
Hold on. We got a couple people in the building I want to acknowledge. Calvin Pogue is here. I want to say hello to you. And Yolanda Riley, of course, I want to say hello to you as well. Make sure that we do those acknowledgments. But I've always thought that when you grow up on a farm, it makes you tough. And you're so used to the chores, the hard work, the lifestyle of getting your hands dirty that nobody messes with you. But that wasn't the case for you?
No, my parents moved from the farm. My dad was on the farm, and they moved up north. But after my parents divorced, and later on my mom remarried, and I moved in with my stepdad and my dad and his wife. When I was 10, I moved in with my dad, and my dad, I guess it was one of those things where when I look back of why I'm an entrepreneur, why I always chose the entrepreneur path is because kids will always do as you do, but they will not do as you say. And it's so important that now, and I realize it, that in working with children and parents, that your actions play a lot into the development of where your kids are heading. But my dad moved south, bought a tavern when I was 12, and we bought a 40-acre farm. And then I got into the farm life of, feeding the chickens and milking the pigs and stuff like that.
So your dad was an entrepreneur?
Well, his mom was always an entrepreneur, and he became an entrepreneur, but that only lasted 2 years before he failed at it, supposedly, and saying, I don't believe in failure. I think that those are ways, the most successful people in the world are those who have failed the most. And we moved up north, and when I was like 14, 15, and then they divorced. And from that time, it was my dad and my two brothers and I until I graduated from high school.
Okay. how did you pass the time with your brothers? Were you guys wrestling, jumping off of garages? What were you doing? Hiking? What was going on?
I was kind of the goody thing, the goody guy. At the time, my brothers were kind of always mischievous, causing problems and stuff for my dad. And one of the things in my life was I never grew up with any concept or any interaction with religion of whatsoever. Never went to church, had no idea about religion or life. And the key point in my life came when I was 17 years old at the end of my senior year in high school. And my dad's father passed away.
Okay.
Now, my dad was only 38. And he was, and he had to go to California for the funeral, left me at home by myself.
Okay.
Now, imagine I'm sitting in bed and I'm thinking, this is the first person that I ever lost in my family. And I know it crushed my dad, and I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing this leaf fluttering in the window. And I'm thinking, well, what happens when you die? Do you just quit thinking? Do you just quit thinking? And I thought, if you just quit thinking, why am I going through all this crap of my finals and school, and I go through life, and at the end I die and it's nothing anyway? And the other thing is curious that I was to the point that I've contemplated taking my own life only because of curiosity.
Hold on. You kind of went directly into my line of thought when you said you made a point of the fact that you weren't really into church when you were young, and I wanted to ask, why is that important to you? And it sounds like, without a lot of understanding of what spirituality was, when you were exposed to it, the concept of death kind of piqued your interest. And so, like, you go from just being an innocent kid to thinking about death to thinking about your own death. And so, I wonder how careful we need to be around spirituality, and what the importance of a spiritual system is for children. Just a couple thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, because the thing that I look at children today, I look at my life, was very simple. We had 3 TV stations, ABC, NBC, and CNN. We never watched TV. We saw our first TV was at my grandparents' house, my mom's side, and I remember seeing the black and white TV. But the only shows we watched was like Leave It to Beaver. So you had Ward and June Cleaver, you had Father Knows Best, you had the Ozzie and Harriet, the very stable family. And I'm thinking, I went through life divorced, my parents divorced and everything, and realized that that's a pretty standard, normal nowadays type of thing with people. Well, when I was going through, no one ever asked me while I was growing up what I wanted to be when I grow up. No one asked me what my dreams were. No one ever asked me any of that. No one interacted enough to start questioning what I want to do to inspire me to go after my dreams. So I had no idea. I was just wondering through that whole time. And you think I had and I never watched the news. We had to watch the news only when we were punished. Mm-hmm. And so we had no idea what was going on. This was 1969. And my pivot point at that point, from 1969, after I went through that frame of mind, what happens when you die, and what's the purpose of life, and where did we come from? Why are we here? Where we're going? All of those questions were always in the back of my mind.
Wow. Hold on. See, this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about having conversations about learning the stories of other people, because I'm noticing a pattern in the public. We had a conversation last week with a gentleman who said that his relationships, his conversations with his elders, his family, those conversations were so poor, if any, that he was thinking about the other side of life at a really young age. I mean, he was thinking about the end of it all at a young age. And now I'm hearing you saying, the same thing.
Yeah, it's a pandemic.
That the quality of the conversations that you have growing up are so important that without them, you want to cut to the chase, which is the potential end, which is the other side of life. And in this conversation, we all know what the other side of life is. And so the pattern that we're pointing out today, right here on America's Next Motivator, is that when you don't have profound conversations with your children and with one another, guess what? Somebody that you know who's grown, they need to have a conversation about their dreams, their aspirations, their self-worth. They need to have that conversation today. But remember the children, they need to have those kinds of conversations, because when they don't, it's possible that they can start thinking that they're not worthy enough to be here. Go ahead, Roland.
Well, and you bring up a great point, because here's the thing: today's kids, when they're growing up, and if I had that frame of mind today as they did, there's a lot of influence. For me, I was the wind could influence where I would go. I was working at a fast food place at that time, and after that, I went to work. And I graduated high school, and I'm sitting there working, and there was this gal. She was probably about 35. I always joke and say she was an elderly lady, about 35, but because when you're young. But we're sitting there wrapping burgers and cooking burgers and stuff, and she looks at me and she says, "So what are you going to do with your life?" I said, "I have no idea." "Are you just going to live with your dad for the rest of your life?" Right. I said, "I have no idea." Now, I had no idea what was going on in the news. This is 69. You know what's going on? Vietnam.
Right.
And so she sat there and she goes, "Well, my husband, Dave, was in the Navy and he really enjoyed it." This is true story, Cedric. She's sitting there and she says, "You should join the Navy." And I look at her and I said, "You know what? Okay." And the next day I joined the Navy. The next day. Now, not realizing what was going on, I ended up doing 4 years in the Navy, 3 tours in Vietnam. But they're such cherished, because the bonding that I received from the guys I served with 50 years later, we're brothers. We're close. We tell each other we love each other. And that was, that part. In fact, in a couple of months, I'm going to go to Indianapolis and drive around to 5 of them. 3 of them become widowers. Because, and to kind of, because a lot of people my age today are lonely, very lonely.
How old are you?
70. I'll be 70 in July.
Okay.
I'm old. but and that's where my life started to really pivot. The military started giving me direction. That's when I started having the spirituality, realizing that, this is not who I am. Who I am is the person who's walking around inside of me and using this vehicle. I had no choice in what this shape, color, whatever I am. I had no choice in it, but that's who I am. And it made me realize today, when I talk to people and a message is, you realize there are 8.3 billion people walking on this planet, all over this whole planet. There's not one person walking on this planet anywhere. You, Cedric, me, no one has any more right to walk on this planet than anyone else. No one. And no one's better than you, and no one's better than me.
I'm thinking, based on what you're saying, how many of us are actually on Earth with 8.3 billion people and still managing to feel lonely?
And that's, you sit there and you think, we talked about, I was sitting there because so many people are labeling people. And I got into my thing down the road because I related to being a baby boomer, and then people were criticizing the millennials, and then you talked about the Gen Xers, and I realized that you start labeling people, and when you start labeling them, you're putting them in groups that maybe they don't even belong in that group, and people make judgment on that group, and you realize that there's only one group that we belong to, because we're all children of God. We all here. And so therefore we're all brothers and sisters, all of us, and even through the 60s and, the hippie era and everything, they've always taught, we're all brothers and sisters, come on people now, everyone, get together, and the songs and stuff, the peace.
Right.
How did we get so far away from that? It just makes me teary-eyed.
Yeah. I hear you. I empathize with every single thing that you're saying tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking to Roland Thompson, and so far, he realized that there was a gap in his experience early in life. There was a gap in his experience. He was a little bit different from his siblings, but there was a lot. It sounds like there was a lot of spiritual work that wasn't done. There was a lot of esteem work that wasn't done. And when you fast forward and you look at what we're doing today, so many of us, we're going to work, we're paying bills, we're managing households, and I don't know that a whole lot more spiritual work is being done from the parent to the child today than it was when he was young. And so we're raising awareness about the fact that when you're not having the conversations about who you are and who your people were and what you have the potential to become and establishing self-value, then, for one, you become highly impressionable. He was working at a fast food restaurant one day, and a fellow employee in passing by told him to join the service, and the next day he went and joined the service. And so to what extent are we being central influences or central influencers on our children and our family members? Are we doing enough influencing one another? That's the question that I'm posing here tonight on America's Next Motivator. And I want to encourage you, if you are living the symptoms that Roland is talking about, even though he's got a success story, and we're going to get to that. But if you have lived a life where that spiritual work has not been done in your life and you're becoming lonely, I want to encourage you to join our community right here on America's Next Motivator. This is your home. America's Next Motivator is where you go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. to listen to our guests, to listen to me, to drop a comment in the chat. And if I don't see you, I'll come looking for you. Now, Roland, after you got out of the service, you spent some time in the Navy, you met some new brothers. What was next for you?
Well, I got married between my second and third tour.
Okay.
And so I got married to a gal she was from the South Pacific. That's my first wife. I kind of joke with people, say I've been married 47 years. It just took 2 women to get there. So,
okay.
But she was pregnant when I left for my third tour. So we didn't have Zoom and Skype and all this. So I never really got to talk to her. And here she is on Hawaii, living in Hawaii by herself, taking care of a kid. And I'm, kind of supporting her. And I was able to get her to go stateside to be with my parents. But when I got out, that's when I learned about, when I got out in December of 73, I went home and I got to see my son, my 1-month-old son, for the first time.
Wow. Okay.
And she was there. We got a house. Then I went and used a GI Bill for the next 7 years and got 2 AA degrees and a bachelor's degree. But here's the thing, Cedric. No one in my family went to college. The only reason why I went to college was because they paid me a good monthly payment if I went all year round, and I stretched that baby out. And they made me, because I had a kid. And over that 7 years, I ended up with 3 more children. So I had a wife and 4 children. And after I got my college degree, I had such a great opportunity. I mean, this is a story of how I got that opportunity in itself is like, it's follow your heart, not logic type of thing. Because I turned down a management job where I was assistant manager for 5 years. And I turned down the management job because the manager, they changed things. The manager I worked for, him and I loved him. We were really close. He was, 20 years older than me. And when he came out of the meeting, they fired him, but actually gave him my job. When they sat down with me and they said, hey, you got a college degree. It now requires a college degree. We're going to give you his job. And I said, nah, I can't do it. Right. Go home to your wife and say, hey, honey, I just got offered a great job, double income, and I turned it down and we're unemployed. Right. But an opportunity came up within the organization to move to the other side of the state. So now I'm in management position. I'm 29 years old, 4 children, a wife, the best dream job in the world. And I could have just gone across that path for the rest of my life, worked up the organization. But I think the Lord had something else in store for me. At that time, I knew that we had a Lord Jesus Christ. I knew there was a God. Everything I've ever prayed for was answered and gave me guidance. Okay. And I knew that there was a life after this, and it was better than this life. I just, the things that you know.
Okay.
So here's where the pivot point, 29, you've been 29 before, right?
Yep.
29, great job, and you're on your way. That was February, 40 years ago today. And so I'm sitting there, and June, my 5th child born. 4 days before my 30th birthday, my oldest son drowns in a lake at a park. And 4 months before he turned 8. Now, I can't explain to you the feeling of losing a child. There's something no one can explain. People try to imagine it. I could never imagine it, but you know what? I was there, and that's what I was faced with.
Right.
My dad came over. He was 49 years old. He'd come over, and we became really close. He was a joker. 4-hour drive. He'd come over and spent that next 6 months kind of helping me. Exactly 6 months from the day that my son drowned, I get a call from my dad's friend. He said, "Hey, Roland, hate to tell you, your dad's dead." I go, "What? What happened?" "Well, he shot himself." And then I had to deal with suicide. Well, my grandmother had cancer, and she was younger than what I am today, and she had cancer, and 6 months later she died. Then my brother-in-law was murdered. Then my grandfather died. And this is all within that 2-year period. I went through a divorce. My wife took the 4 kids, went to the other side of the mountain to be with her parents. I had to resign from my job. And now I'm 32 years later, 31, homeless, jobless, and no family around.
I got to say something here. This is a moment where you relate to so many people clear across America. Ladies and gentlemen, I need for you to get some hearts and likes in the building. Roland Thompson is sharing his story at 70 years old. He's transparent. He's doing it chronologically. And I'm having visions of the 30-year-olds who are out here in America today going through tragedy and who are at a fork in the road. See, at 30 years old, your life is usually firmly in your hands. And sometimes when you're going through stuff, like a lot of people are, they're going through things. Sometimes you don't make it on the other side of those experiences. Sometimes, you get swallowed up by a circumstance. And so for all the people who are out here who can relate to what Roland Thompson is saying, I want you guys to drop some hearts in the building, some likes in the building, share this video, text and tag somebody, and get somebody else into the building, because I know for a fact that between 26 and 30 years old, life can be tough on you. I know firsthand that life can be tough on you. And so this is the point where so many people can relate to you, Roland. And I want to know how you overcame the stress, the anxiety of losing that many people in your world. How did you cope? What did you do?
Well, it was struggle because I had to try to get a job because I had child support to do, and you had all this stuff, and I was without a job. Got into the financial world, but I was listening to a speaker at church, and he just lost his 2 children, and his wife had got injured in a car accident. He wasn't with them. But he told this story that I've shared before, and I even shared it with the book that I did with Jack Canfield, but was the Chinese farmer story. Now here's the thing. It may only impact 1 or 2 people that are listening, but that's what it takes, just one. This is how it went, and it changed my life. In the Chinese community, whatever they raise, that's what they live on throughout the year in the farming community.
Okay.
One day, the farmer went out to his corral, and his only horse had taken off. His son left the gate open. His only horse taken off in the hills. And the neighbors go, "Oh, you poor man. Now your family's going to starve. You can't plow your field. What bad luck you have." And he goes, "Well, good luck, bad luck. We'll see." Well, a couple days later, the horse came back out of the hills with about 3 wild horses following it and goes into the corral. The son, he goes out and closes the gate, probably happy because he's not grounded anymore, and the neighbors go, "Oh my gosh, you are so lucky. Look at this. Now you have these 3 horses, you can break them, you sell them, you are very wealthy. What good luck you have." And he goes, "Well, good luck, bad luck, we'll see." Well, his son was breaking one of these wild horses, got bucked off and broke his leg. And the neighbors go, "Oh my gosh, you poor man. Your son broke his leg. You have to take care of him and his chores and your chores. What a struggle. What bad luck you have." And he says, "Good luck, bad luck, we'll see." Well, about that time, the Chinese army was coming through these farming communities, taking these young men to go off to war to never return again. And they come to the farmer's house, and he's sitting there, and he goes, and they say, "Well, we can't take your son. He's got a broken leg. He's lame." And they pass him up. And the neighbor's like, "Can you believe the luck of this guy?" Some of them mourning from the loss of their kids. And he said, "What good luck you have." And he said, "Well, good luck, bad luck, we'll see." At that moment, Cedric, that moment was when I realized, I said, "Oh my gosh, something's good is going to come out of what I just went through." And there, my blinders are on, looking for the good. And you know what happens when that happens? The good pops up. I was married again, had a son, my wife and I. So she had 3 children. My wife and I, we adopted our youngest 30 years ago from Romania when she was 2 weeks old. And so we got this huge family all of a sudden. My kids would come over from the other side, and it was heaven. It was like, I can't imagine life being better than what it was. And I worked for the next 30 years in the financial world, started businesses, worked with businesses. Anyway, it got in that mindset. I worked personally with people like Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, Bob Proctor, and I just was reading everything and going to seminars and studying with them, and just everything I can to what I can do to help other people get through this. I share the Chinese farmer story all the time.
Right.
And I just say, when something happens like that, always remember, the moment something happens, I call it the moment yogurt hits the fan in your life. That moment, in my mind, something good's going to come out of that, and I look for the good. And it just trained that. That's what I do, and it always happens. So anyway,
So for the people who might be going through adversity right now, your advice to them is to change your perspective, to shift your focus on the good things, the positive lining that's there. And I think that's great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Roland Thompson. We are just getting started along his journey, and we've got more. So you guys sit tight, and we're going to be right back after this brief message. Don't go anywhere. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Roland, how you feeling out there?
Unbelievable still.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to build blocks in life. It's almost like, you put one foot in front of the other. And where we left off with looking at what's positive in your life and building from that, I've built an entire career off that. My first comment in my journey was success is a choice. That one positive comment led to hundreds of other positive comments that is now a curriculum, a culture, a community that I'm presenting to our world here. America's Next Motivator was one of those comments. And so find what's positive in your life, build on it, stand on it, believe in it, and you'll be amazing. You'll be amazed at the traction that can take place. Now, I'm looking at that guitar in your background, and I'm thinking about the potential that you're into music. What role did music play in your journey?
Well, when I was growing up, no one asked me, like I said, that what do I want to be? But secretly in my mind, I've always listened to all the records and music, and I would lip sync and I would sing. And so I had this desire for music. But I got a guitar back when I was in high school. My brother received a guitar, and he was supposed to take lessons, but he didn't. And so my brother and I traded my bedroom, which was downstairs, to where he could sneak out really good at night, for his bedroom, which was upstairs, for his guitar.
Okay.
And my neighbor was playing the piano, and so I taught myself how to play the guitar, like in my junior year, senior year in high school, just for my own pleasure and learning chords and stuff. Then I would play the guitar when I was overseas, and ship tapes back and forth to my little sister who loved to sing, and we would record cassette tapes. They're like these little square. People don't know what they are, but they're like. So we would send cassette tapes back and forth, but that's where it was always, and never really went further than that until my our youngest son, who is now 36, when he was 6 years old, showed interest in music. Now, I started putting it at that time is for people, young people, to find out what their dreams are, what they are, and they need someone to just say, hey, I have your back, go for it. And I always did that with him. And now he became and he wrote, his senior project was, he wrote an album of 17 new songs, and recorded it. And it was, just, that's what he did. And I just supported him in it. And since then, even today, we're still involved, and he's won like 3 John Lennon Grand Prize songwriting, and they won. His band has been on I did a tour for their band. I sponsored with Mark Cuban and Ryan Seacrest, and they were Access TV, and I did the sponsoring of it, and it was like 5 weeks, 7 states, and it was to high school kids.
Okay.
They never get to see music, and it was, and so that was kind of like watching my son live his dream, which would have been my dream, was more satisfying to me than me doing it, if that makes sense.
That's right. Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I went out there and I found a video of you doing a performance with your son, and I'm going to show the audience that video. So you just sit tight. I'm going to share this video. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great story. He supported his son, and they got to do some great things together. So I'm going to show this video, and you guys check it out. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear it, and if you're enjoying it. So let's see what we got. So that's your son?
Yes.
My child arrived just the other day.
You guys can hear the song. Drop a number 1 in the chat.
In the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away. He was talking for I knew, and as he grew, he'd say, "I'm gonna be like you. I'm gonna be like you." And
those are nice looking guitars.
And the silver spoon, yellow boy blue, and the man in the moon. When you coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. We'll have a good time then.
Is this an old song? Is this an old classic here?
Yeah, it's a medley of 2 songs.
Okay.
And so much more.
Young song and a Gary
paradise that makes me think of 2. Love lost such cost. Give me things that don't get lost, like a coin that won't get tossed. Rolling home to you, rolling home to you. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon.
Great.
Little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when. We'll get together then. We'll have a good time then.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to pause it here and talk to me a little bit about that project. What did it mean to you? And how do you feel about your son taking that influence and is now touring around the country?
Well, and he's caught on to my foundation and the meaning behind it. And
Okay.
something happened. The last touring he did was in 19 because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in tour and we were in Phoenix, and there was an incident that happened where he had an accident and he split his head, but he still performed that night and with the band. But on his way back, he said, we have the RV and trailer. He pops in the front with me and he said, that it made me think. I'm laying there bleeding, mm-hmm. and I have my wife and kids at home. It's like, why am I doing this? And I realized that, really having a message and a purpose behind doing the touring. A lot of young people, it's like, well, become famous and stuff. And we've had friends that become famous in the industry that we'd known before they were famous. And then he just started realizing that really wasn't his dream. His was helping people who have their story. Music, see, there's three ways of getting, everyone has a story, everyone. And there's three ways, either on the stage, either in music, or in the media, and writing a book. You get your story out there. And so that was kind of and then COVID happened right after that. And he had some big tours planned, and they all fell through, which now we look back is, what a blessing. Him and I looked back and said, COVID has been a blessing. Now, some people will say, no, it hasn't, because yeah, but the story isn't over yet for you. It's not over yet. Just look for the good out of it, and it may come. But every single human being, when they come to this earth, is already predestined with a personality and a purpose. And it's for us to connect that purpose and support them, because my big dream is for every single human being to live the reason they are here. That's right.
So now, as you worked in the financial sector for over 30 years, I think you said,
right.
Did you learn things there that you were able to use and apply, to other areas of your life? But maybe that wasn't your dream, your ideal life, to work in the financial sector. So I'm sure you learned some things there, but you decided to do more of your passion once you retire from the financial industry?
Well, it kind of like it was one of those things where, I look back and said, I've probably interviewed 5,000 to 7,000 couples over the years. I was always, one of my branding was I was one of the nation's top financial advisors to baby boomers.
Okay.
One of the things I was a retirement. I helped people plan retirement. Well, now, as I got towards the end of that, I go, this is so wrong. We were never intended to retire as human beings. We need to create. And as long as you're breathing, you should be creating. And retirement is for this life after this. And then I realized that where I got the inspiration for Heart of the Father was the Shake Up. And it was from a book that I was reading, which was so weird because it's like I was guided right to it. And I read the book, and it said that, it talked about my parents, grandparents being the greatest generation. That was Tom Brokaw, talks about the greatest generation. Then it started talking about the baby boomers. My generation was going to be known as the worst generation. And I go,
wow. Okay.
That was impactful. I researched it out, and I said, my gosh, we are going to be the worst generation. What can we do to turn it around? And that's where the first of me realizing that and started guiding me to my foundation.
Okay. Do you think that we need to rethink retirement?
Oh, big time. Here's the thing, Cedric. I'm going to put a lot of people on. I'm 70 in 3 months. Mm-hmm. At 70, I have to take Social Security.
Okay.
So why? Why is that? And so I'm working with my congressman on this one. I said, why can't we just lift the lid up? What if I wanted to work in 8 more years, contribute to Social Security, and not pull it out? It won't run out in 13 years. Because if there's a lot of people who have that mindset. And Social Security came into play in 1935, and it was solely to help those who could not work anymore after they reached their late years of life. It came out at 65, you can get Social Security, but average age of death for a man was 58. And it was to help those who couldn't work anymore. And it was more of a social program to help those in need Now they trade it into a retirement. And, and I get people my age that go, don't you screw around with my Social Security. Don't mess with it, because they count on that. And then they go off and they're the loneliest people, no purpose, and here they were, but they were forced to leave at age 70. Mm-hmm. It's not right.
So do you see an opportunity for people who are getting up in age to get involved with yet another program where they can express themselves, tell their story, and hopefully, do something that soothes their heart and manifest their destiny?
Well, I'm looking for hook questions for my video. So how am I going to awaken these people out there, that lonely people? How am I going to awaken them? And so whenever I run across a grandparent, now I think you pointed out, I have 46 grandchildren.
You got 46 grandchildren?
Yeah. And it's like, who are all these kids? Why do they keep calling me grandpa? And how come we don't have any money at the end of the year? But I'll tell you what, I have two families that are close to me, and both of them had their teenagers take their own lives. Now, wow. How would you like to be a grandparent? And your son calls you up and said, hey, Dad, 14-year-old Julie killed herself. And to be a grandparent, when you hear that, and how would you like to feel if you knew that maybe you could have done something about it? Is that a hook question? Because if your grandchildren are still alive, how do you know that they're not on the verge? They tell you what to look for signs of suicide, the depression, and what they're doing, but they don't get deeper. And when a child realizes, and you get them to where they realize that, hey, I am a spiritual being here on earth to have human experiences. I do have a specific reason why I'm here, and the world needs me.
That's right.
And the thing is no one's asking these kids. The grandparents is a great opportunity. But here's what I hear, Cedric. Well, they don't call me anymore. They don't have anything to do with me. And I realize that, well, and then we can't relate. They're on their cell phones and their iPads all the time. They complain about them. And so they don't interact. And there are some great grandparents out there that are really good examples, but there's not enough. And so what I have is each of my 46 grandchildren, I visualize them every morning, every time I can, and I give thanks. Every morning I do my gratitude. If you're not doing your gratitude, looking around what you have and giving thanks, that gets you into the prosperity mindset already. If you don't, you throw what's more into it for me, you're into a poverty mindset. It's only headed one way. And you think of the third world countries, and I've been all over and I've seen third world countries where people who have nothing compared to what we have, 7 people in a tiny little place and barely getting by food, and they're happy, and they're happy and they're joy because they have family. And so there's no excuse, but they're thankful for the morsel of food they get and they give thanks for it. And that's where, if you have grandparents, so the whole part of this project, in fact, my foundation is the vision is to provide the tools and education needed to effectively connect. I call them the sunset generation. We're the older sunset generation, and the rising generation, the younger ones, creating a world where all are inspired to work together as they live their true life's purpose. Mm-hmm. And my mission is we are members of the sunset generation who are passionately invested in making the world better by empowering the rising generation to live the reason they are here. Now, think about this. Where's everybody's focus today? They're watching TV. Let me tell you, I'm gonna a little bit of a high horse thing here. You have such a division in this country, and I learned this back in 2008 when the financial market was going really poopy. And then I learned that CNBC or wherever it was, I was back in State Street, then I was in New York City, that I realized when I was watching these NBC studios, and I'm watching the person behind reading the news, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she probably put her kids off to school. She gets paid at that time maybe $150,000, $200,000, made a great income. But then I started realizing who pays her salary. Mm-hmm. Well, the studio does. The NBC pays her salary. Where do they get their money? And they get their money from advertising based on viewership. Right. Now, she got on the video and said, hey, everybody, such a beautiful day outside, and you have your family, And you need to be spending time with them and enjoying this great day, this great, beautiful country, and all these beautiful, wonderful people around. And you need to be making friends and helping people. Why are you sitting here watching the TV? Think what would happen to the TV station if she did that.
Right.
So what they do is they put addictive stuff on. And you know who's the most addicted people to these stations right now?
Cool.
It's old people like me. They're news, and they're divided because you get the liberals and the conservatives, and and you got the two divisions,
right,
and dividing them. And it's the same way it was probably back in 250 years ago when George Washington, the colonists and the British, divided. Right. Back when we ended up with Abraham Lincoln, you had slave owners and you had people that didn't, and we're getting too divided. Something's going to happen.
That's right.
We've got to fix it bottom up. It can't be fixed top down. One of the future leaders at a time. These children, these little children, is we need to get their mindset set that they are spiritual beings here. They have human experiences, but they have a purpose, and getting them on that mindset, the future leaders, and eventually will work its way up to where we don't have all that. And that's the good work that you're doing, and that's what I love about your program.
Probably 15 to 18 minutes ago, you asked, how did we get to where we are today, where there's lack of cohesion, there's a lack of unity across our communities. And I think that we're covering that right here. The sunset generation and the sunrise generation, they're not talking enough. And you have to look at what's in the way of the children and the elders conversation. And to your point, a lot of it is media. It's propaganda. It's the television. It's the TV show. It's the magazine if you still read them. And there's so many things. There's so much noise between the sunrise generation and the sunset generation. But what we are reminding each other of tonight is the need for the conversations, the humor. See, I think that humor is when the younger interact with the older, and it makes their heart warm. And that laughter, that smile that you get when you're interacting with your family, that's humor. And so the world is getting we're getting a lot of jokes, we're getting a lot of laughter, but I think we're not getting as much humor as we really need. We've got to make sure that the children are sitting at the feet of elders the same way I'm sitting here listening to you today. We've got to make sure that we listen to one another, that we tell our stories. We've got a lot of older people, they've never told their stories. People don't know who they've been, what they've done. And you are a good role model for other people who are 70 years old today. How many 70-year-olds out there have told their story? We have some who still need to tell their story. How does our world change? How does our world change when our elders say, hold up, before I get out of here, I want to let you know who I am and what my experience has been. I'm going to venture to say that there's a young man and a young woman who's eager to hear it. And that is how you connect the sunset generation with the sunrise generation. Go ahead.
Well, it's the rising generation, because here's one of the things, and I'm going to stand to correct you on this a little bit. For us older people, when we want to share with them, now I do have a very good success story that with this whole thing when I evolved 3 years ago, to where it's like just by doing what I was sitting there. I think it's not sharing our stories with the rising generation. The sunset generation needs, because there's no way we've lived this beautiful life. I've lived 70 years. I'm great. I got to do everything. Now I want to help my grandchildren live their life. I can't relate with them because I lived first 50 years of my life was without technology. That's all they know. So here's how it's done. And this is what we're working on, is getting the mindset is don't go out there and teach them. Don't sit there and don't criticize them or judge them or anything. Go out and get to know who they are. Sit there when you're with them, ask them about them, ask them about their friends, and show genuine interest without judgment and accepting them wholeheartedly no matter what they say to you. Whether it's struggling with sexuality, whatever it is that they're dealing with, accept that. Mm-hmm. Because look at them through the eyes that God looks at them and love them unconditionally. When you know who they are, truly know who they are, then they will know who you are. But first, learn who they are. And every time, I've got these socks I usually wear, and they've got all my grandchildren's pictures on them, pink, yellow, green, and I wear those socks all the time, and I mix them up. But they got my two grandchildren's faces on them to keep me with intent. When I'm with them, I ask them about them. I kept doing that. Pretty soon when I walk into a room and I've got a 5 or 8 year old grandchild on their video or whatever, they put it down and come over and talk to me. Mm-hmm. And the one, and I know your time wise, but I have this one success story. We've dealt with meth addicts. One of our children is dealing with drug addiction, really bad, been with years. Had a child. The child ended up having to leave his home, and so instead of going to foster care, me and Grandma took him in when he was 15. Now, when he's struggling. He's a junior in high school. He's struggling in school. He's getting bad grades. He's doing all this. I put on my dad hat, and I started grounding him off the phone. I started grounding him off the internet, telling him he gets the room cleaned, and I started doing all that. He started withdrawing. He started withdrawing and withdrawing. He ended up dropping out of school in his junior year in high school. Wouldn't hardly talk. He was going into depression. And later on, when I talked to him about this, he was that close to taking his own life. Mm-hmm. Now, the person back today that I am today, talking to the person I was back there, would go, "So you want him to change, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I want him to change. Not going to happen. You have to change." The moment I started and backed off completely and just started learning everything, asking about what he's doing, showing interest. He was into gaming, professional gaming and stuff like this. And most people criticize that, but I started asking him about it. Is that what you want to do? Well, then let's do it. He kept doing that. And I'm finding out more. He got a job. He ended up getting his GED. And then one day he walks out of his room and he looks at me and said, "Grandpa, I want to join the Army." I go, "Yes," discipline and all that. Mm-hmm. Purpose. That's where I got. And I go, "That'd be great." And then he goes and he said, we'd help them. And right when he was getting ready to sign on the bottom line that he is going to go and committed to the military, he looked up and he said, "What would you think if I went on a service mission for church?" Mm-hmm. I go, "Wow, you haven't been to church or anything?" But he did, and he ended up going to the Philippines for 2 years, learned Tagalog, and he was like the best missionary. Loved it, third world country, came back a year ago, January, joined the Army. Now he's in military intelligence, and he's learning language and everything. And him and I are on the phone all the time telling me about what that younger generation's about. And that's where it's got to go.
Phenomenal.
He's a great leader.
Phenomenal.
It is.
Ladies and gentlemen, drop a one in the chat if you are appreciating this conversation. And we're at the crux of it right now. We're getting down to the last final minutes of the conversation. And I got to share a couple of things. I spent years of my life in several different families. My life was changed when I became adopted at the age of 15. I spent several years of my life in foster care. And before then, I lived with my grandmother before I lived with my mother. And I understand how we search for identity, and we've got to keep that in the front of our minds, that people want to know who they are. And a lot of our adults are more prone to providing discipline, saying what you can do and what you cannot do. And they think that that's sharing personality. That's not sharing personality, when all you're doing is saying what you can do and what you cannot do. But being able to answer the question, who are you, is extremely important, because this is the reason why young people are giving up, calling it quits, having no self-esteem, because they don't know what they're made of. And yeah, they can go off and become something, but when you're wondering who you are, the friend of who am I is depression. The friend of who am I is stress. The friend of who am I is drugs and alcohol. And so we've got to alleviate that question of who am I by telling people, who are we? Now I'm going to give you 8 seconds, Roland, to tell us who you are. Who are you? You got 5 seconds.
I am a spiritual being following the guidance of our Father to reach and prepare the world for the second coming, by reaching the leaders of the world that are going to be here and being the leaders, and connecting them with that. I'm only a messenger of that, and I'm doing it by trying to be the light.
Okay. See, that right there, that little slice of content from you is what all of your grandchildren need. It's what the young people need to know, who you are. Think about that question, ladies and gentlemen. Who am I? Can you answer that question? That's what the young people need to know. They need to know who you are, so that could be the one piece of, information that they build everything off around, so that they can know, okay, my foundation is firm. All right. Now I got 3 questions for you as we round third base here. The first question: what is survival to you?
Well, that's a tough one. A good question. Survival.
We got 15 seconds left in the show.
Survival is doing what I'm doing now and being able to be on track to live in the reason I'm here.
What is success to you?
Success is that I'm actually living the reason why I'm here, and it's the journey. It's not the destination.
What is greatness to you?
Greatness is not about me. It's about our Savior and Him dying for us and showing us that there is a life after this, and we have a rule book and a guidance of how we can live our life here.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. Roland Thompson, I want to let you know that we listened to your story today. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey. We're giving you your respect today while you're still alive to receive it, and we're giving you your crown today while you're still here to receive it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We are letting the world know that you, Roland Thompson, you are America's next motivator. All right? Thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you very much, Cedric. And thanks for your work that you do.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do is stop by and pick up.